So the last part of the fluvial part of erosion is the formation of a delta. You must be knowing that the Indo-Gangetic delta, or sorry, that is the delta made by Ganga and Brahmaputra, that is Ganges and Brahmaputra delta, is the largest delta in the world, covering around 40% of Malaysia. That is one of the, it covers so much population, it covers so much area that it has become the largest delta in the world. That is the Gangetic delta is known as. So what is a delta? Where is the Gangetic delta? Which is a famous kind of a forest found in the Gangetic delta? And then what is the name of a animal, which major animal is found in the Gangetic delta? And before that, before we come to the environment ecology part, first the geographical part, what is the delta? So delta is, what is it? We have already done depositional or erosional feature. Delta is an depositional feature formed at the mouth of a river when the river enters into the sea. Because the river enters into the sea, the speed of a river is reduced, and due to the reduction in the speed of the river starts depositing. Over the period of time, the deposition increases and the river starts bifurcating into different kind of distributaries. River becomes stronger, we can say the river becomes big by getting water from tributaries. The river ends by ending water or by distributing water from the distributaries. So the tributaries bring water to the river, distributaries give water from river to the sea. So whereas these distributaries at the lowest or the oldest stage of a riverine cycle is the distributaries. So in the delta, what is a delta? Delta is a depositional feature. It is a depositional feature. Almost triangular in shape. Almost triangular in shape. When the river enters the sea. Almost triangular in shape when the river enters the sea. For example, as I told you, the largest delta in the world is the Gangetic delta. It is the example of the largest delta in the world. Now, how is the delta formed? How is the delta formed? The river which enters into the sea region, it is bringing lot amount of sediments. Due to the resistance by the sea water, the speed of a river is reduced. As a result of this, river starts depositing. Due to deposition, again there are formation of different kind of structures. Maybe some riverine islands, maybe some sandbars, maybe some kind of sand hills, and as a result the river cannot jump on the sand hill. It is not having that much erosive power, therefore river cannot cut through the sand hill, therefore it takes another path, and therefore the river starts converting into distributaries. So what is the first stage in the formation of an delta? The first stage in the formation of an delta, river starts depositing sediments. River starts depositing sediments in the sea. Now you remember one thing, when the river comes from mountain to the plain region, it forms an alluvial fan. When the river enters from the plain region into the sea, still more decrease in the speed, it forms an delta. Something fan-like structure, something triangular structure. So it starts with river starts depositing sediments into the sea. Then, due to regular sedimentation, due to the regular sedimentation, river is distributed into numerous distributaries distributed. Such a river is known as braided river. That is the, how can I show you in the diagram? See, for example, if the river is coming and meeting the sea here, this is the ocean surface, this is the sea here, and the river is coming and meeting the sea. Due to the resistance, the river starts depositing sediments. If this red color are the sediments, the rivers will start depositing the sediments. Now here the river does not have that much power, so the river now next time is divided into numerous channels. So as a result of this, the numerous channels will be formed, and in between them there will be numerous sediments, and therefore again the river will start developing more and more channels. So this kind of a river which is having too many channels is known as a braided river. So what is a braided river? Not necessarily connected only at delta. Braided river can be there even in the mature stage. It can be there even in the old age. A river which is divided into numerous channels is known as a braided river. River Brahmaputra is best example of a braided river. Open your atlas, see the map of Brahmaputra. You will see numerous lands, that means islands, in the flow of Brahmaputra in the Assam region. Given an example, that is river Brahmaputra is flowing, an island comes taking a diversion from the two parts of an island, and then that means it has been broken down. It has into different channels. Such is known as a braided feature. So the river starts depositing and it's converted into a braided river. Such extensive deposition is known as a delta. Now over the period of time, these deposits will be sedimented, they will become compact to give rise to a land structure, and these deposits will increase and the river will look like a narrow streams, and in between this will be entirely a land structure due to the process of compaction of the sediments resulting into formation of a delta. So people will start living here, maybe the settlements will come in this region, or maybe agriculture will be practiced in this region. That is, there will be some areas, Bengal Delta, Bangladesh, people are living in the delta region, Bengal, people are living in the delta region. It will give rise to the human settlements. So how is first delta form? River starts depositing the sediments into the sea. Due to the regular sedimentation, river is bifurcated into numerous distributaries. So as a result of this, we say the river is bifurcated into numerous channels. Such a river is known as braided river. Over the period of time, the deposit will get cemented, compacted, resulting into formation of a delta. Now, is the delta formed everywhere? You open your India atlas and see the rivers such as Godavari and see the shape how they meet the sea. See the delta of Ganga, how does it meet the sea? See the Kaveri river, how does it meet the sea? On the other hand, see the western coast of India, you will see the river is directly going into the sea. There is no such bifurcation, no such channels, so no such wide area of sediments, no such diagram showing something like this based on the size of a delta. So that means deltas are not formed everywhere, or some of the deltas are major deltas, some of the deltas may be minor deltas. There are some conditions which are favorable for the deltas, while some conditions are not favorable. Narmada and Tapi do not form a delta. Ganga forms a delta. Godavari forms a delta. Kaveri forms a delta. Krishna forms a delta. Why do not a single river of western coast of India forms a delta? We'll come to know that in the conditions required for the formation of a delta. So the next is conditions for delta formation. There are some of the conditions which are necessary for the formation of an delta, and the first condition is there should be, and one of the first condition for the formation of delta, there should be large supply of sediments. That means there should be sediments to deposit first. If the river is not carrying the sediments, then obviously the river cannot form the delta. Now why does Ganga and Brahmaputra form a delta? Now the first condition is supply of sediments. One of the first condition is there should be large amount of sediments of sediments. So for large amount of sediments, what should the river do? The river should erode. The river should have an extensive erosion, then only it will get sediments. Sediments will come from erosion. So where will be the erosion occur? In the upper part of the river. So there should be large amount of sediments. That means the river should engage in extensive erosion. Therefore, there should be active erosion. In upper course of a river. In the upper course of a river. Then only the sediments will be formed. The second is, for the sediments to form, the river has to, the maximum long the river is, the maximum path it travels, the maximum distance it travels, there will be more sediments. If the river is traveling for example, only 20 kilometers, on other hand, if a river is traveling for 2000 kilometers before meeting the sea, which river will be having more sediments? 20 kilometers or 2000 kilometers? Obviously 2000 kilometers, not the 20 kilometers one. Therefore, the second condition is the river should travel a large distance. The river should travel a large distance for the formation of a river, or we can say the river courses should be long. The course of a river should be long. Now look here at the Indian part. Now here we can derive why the Himalayan rivers such as Ganga forms the delta and why do the peninsular rivers do not form the delta. Himalayan region, sorry, not peninsular rivers, on the rivers on the western coast. The Himalayan rivers originate from the Himalayas and they come and they enter the Bangladesh region. Brahmaputra enters this region. Young river suddenly enters India by taking hairpin bend, then flows through Assam region and joins river Ganga and forms. See the amount of erosion they are doing. Ganga is extensively eroding here. Soft alluvial soil, so some kind of a erosion, some kind of a sedimentation is there. The load of Brahmaputra is flowing for a larger distance from the mountainous region, and for a very small distance, this is a Leh Ladakh region, and very far a small distance from the plain region. It suddenly comes from Himalayas, that is Arunachal Pradesh, and suddenly jumps into the Assam. Therefore, large amount of sediments with Brahmaputra. Why Brahmaputra, the only river in the world having a male name, not a female name, feminine name. See, all the rivers in the world are named after females, or they are having feminine name. There is only one river in the entire world which is having a masculine or a male name. Maybe due to the large amount of sediments, the kind of load the river carries, that is why the name is Brahmaputra. So, as a result of this large supply of sediments, and obviously resulting into the largest delta in the world. On the other hand, all the rivers which originate on the western side of a Western Ghat, they do not form delta because The first condition is not satisfied. Rocky structure, they do not have that much sediments. Even if they have sediments, their course is so short that they cannot form delta. Therefore, you can, in fact, for preliminary examination point of view, you can write down the reason why the Western Ghats, for prelims point only, you should write preliminary examination, the rivers originating on the western side of Western Ghats flow for a very short distance, and therefore no delta, and therefore no delta. This is generally for preliminary examination, that is the rivers originating on the western side of the Western Ghats, because they flow for a very short distance, they do not satisfy our condition 2, therefore no delta formation. The third reason for the delta formation, the third condition necessary for the delta formation is, consider a situation when there are two sea coasts. When the land is going in a very gentle manner inside the sea, and consider this situation when the land is suddenly going deep inside the sea. Which one will you prefer for swimming? This one? This one? This one, safer coast, because the chances are that you may survive here. Obviously no. Delta formation requires deposition of a sediments. The river, if it brings sediments here and deposit its sediments, they get penetrated, they are lost deep inside the sea because of ocean currents, ocean waves. But on here hand, if the river brings the sediments, even the ocean currents and ocean waves, they carry the sediments and deposit here. Over the period of time, this deposition goes on increasing. This deposition will increase and results into the formation of an delta. So the third condition is shallow sea coast, not a deep sea coast. Now the fourth condition also, if there is a very strong winds, very strong waves, very strong currents, even if in this sedimented, even if the sediments are deposited, whether it be shallow sea coast or an deep sea coast, obviously no delta formation. But even if there are strong winds, strong ocean currents which flow parallel, for example, if this is a sediment deposit which are perpendicular to the deposit of sediments, this ocean current will remove away that sediment, resulting into no delta formation. That means the fourth condition is sea should be calm. So can we say that sea coast should be shallow and the sea should have calm conditions, no very strong winds, no ocean currents which are moving perpendicular to the sediment supply. So the third condition is shallow sea, fourth condition is calm sea. What do you mean by calm sea? Calm sea means there should not be strong currents at right angles. Calm sea means no stronger tides should be absent. Absence of strong tides and ocean currents perpendicular to the coastline. Ocean currents perpendicular to the coastline. There should be absence of these conditions, that is, there should not be strong sea and ocean currents perpendicular to the coastline. Now consider if a river is flowing into the sea, if this is a sea water, and the river comes and directly meets the sea, obviously the most of the sediments are deposited, resulting into formation of a delta. This is the normal condition. But consider an hypothetical situation when there is a presence of a very big lake before the river enters the sea. So when the river enters the lake here, the speed of a river is reduced because the difference is nothing, just a lake. That is again a stable lake, speed of a river is reduced, and then the river goes and meets the sea. What this lake will do, because of the reduction of the speed of a river, it will cause sedimentation around the lake. So most of the sediments will be deposited here surrounding the lake region, resulting into no delta formation or a very small delta formation here. So one of the conditions, that is the fifth condition, is absence of lake. Why? Because the lake acts like a filter which filters out the sediments from the river, and the clean river water goes to the, that is the sediment free water, goes and meets the sea. So the fifth condition is absence of an lake. There should not be, the fifth condition is there should be no large lake. There should be no large lake in the river course. In the river course. Why? Because lake will filter out the sediments. The lake will filter out the sediments. So what are the five conditions? There should be large amount of sediment supply. For the sediment supply, there should be an active erosion in the upper course of a river. Obviously, the course of a river should be long. There should be the sea should be shallow and calm. What do you mean by calm? Absence of strong tides and ocean currents which are perpendicular to the coast, and there should not be a large lake near the course because to filter out. And of the last condition for the formation of a delta is the sixth condition for the delta formation is there should be stable geological conditions. That means the conditions should be stable for long period of time. What do you mean by long period of time? There should not be submergence or uplifting or emergence or submergence of a coastline. On the other hand, if the unstable conditions are there, for example, it took maybe 300 years for the Ganga to make its delta, and tomorrow if the land is submerged under, then the work is finished. Then there will be no large delta. So there should be a stable conditions. This is what distinguishes the eastern coast from the western coast. The eastern coast has been a stable coast. The western coast has tilted into the sea, resulting into no deltas, but estuaries on the western coast. So there should be last condition is stable conditions. What do you mean by stable conditions? Don't confuse it with calm conditions. It means that there should be no emergence or submergence of a coast. There should not be any emergence or submergence of an coast. So very simple conditions for the formation of delta, important for both preliminary examination and the main examination. There should be very common sense. That is why I say geography is more of a common sense. There should be large amount of sediments. Why? Because delta is made of sediments. For the sediments there should be an active erosion in the upper course. For active erosion, large amount of sediments, the river should flow for a long distance. Therefore the course of a river should be longer. Example I gave you is Western Ghats versus the Gangetic Delta. There should be shallow sea. Why? Because if there is a very deep sea, the sediments will be washed away. Calm sea conditions. Again, if there are not presence of calm conditions, then if the conditions are not calm, the sediments will be washed away. There should not be lake, otherwise the sediments will be filtered away. And stable coast, stable conditions of a coastline. In the terms of geology, what I mean here, geologically stable conditions of an coastline, then only the delta will be formed. Now here the delta, we will be studying the three major types of delta for your examination based on their shapes. So this has been a past year question. You do this in the preliminary examination. What are the different types of conditions now based on the coastline? Again, very simple to understand why there are different shapes of a delta. There are three major types of an delta based on their shapes. The first one is a arcuate delta. What is an arcuate delta? It is a fan-shaped delta. That means the soil is the shape of a fan. Shape of a fan is somewhat like this. The handmade fan, that is the central part projects deep inside the sea while it becomes narrower as we progress outside. Now how is this delta formed? This delta is formed because the main river channel enters into the sea. The sediments are coarse and therefore they get readily settled down. The sediments are as dense as seawater, therefore the such kind of a delta, now look, is the sediments are settled down to give rise to a fan. Now why I am saying as coarse, as dense as seawater, because you will understand that while doing the next topic, that is the bird foot delta. So the arcuate delta is like a fan-shaped delta. Is a fan-shaped delta. Now before I do the fan-shaped delta, here, you look here how the arcuate delta will look like. If this is a seawater, the river, obviously the main channel of a river is carrying more amount of sediments. It enters into the sea. As the sediments are coarse in nature, the river starts depositing the sediments in the surrounding regions. The rivers will start depositing the sediments in the surrounding region. As a result of the deposition of sediments, land will be formed. The river will again get bifurcated into different channels. Again the deposition of sediments here. Again the river will get bifurcated. Based on this, if there is a deposition of sediments in this region, the river will get bifurcated into different kind of regions. So, deposition of sediments, again the river is getting bifurcated. So can you see this? That is, it is having a fan shape, that is, it is looking somewhat like a fan, that is, the main channel is extending deep inside the sea while the surrounding regions margins narrow down. Now you remember here there are some of the important points of an arcuate delta. It is also known as an fan-shaped delta. Or it is also known as lobate delta. It is the most common type of delta. It is the most common type of a delta. is the most common type of an delta. Semicircular or fan shaped, it is a semicircular or fan shaped. It is a semicircular or fan shaped, made up of coarser materials. It is made up of coarse materials. When the density of the sediments, here the river water is as dense as the sea water. In this, the river water is as dense as the sea water, That is, the density of river water and the sea water is equal. The river water is as dense as in sea water. Now, because the river water is as dense as the sea water, the delta spreads out, because the river cannot go deep inside the sea, though the river is coming with an high velocity, resulting into formation of an fan-shaped delta. It is, again I said, the most common type of a delta. It is semicircular or a fan-shaped, made up of coarse materials, when the river water is as dense as in sea water. Repeating, as dense as sea water is a fan-shaped delta. How to remember? Fan is when the river water is equal density as a sea water. Past year question, mark it as an important one. Now, what are the examples? There are numerous examples of a fan-shaped delta, but you remember some of the important examples. One of the best example is River Nile. So the examples of a fan-shaped delta, the examples of this fan-shaped delta is Nile, is River Nile. Which country? Egypt. River Ganga, Brahmaputra. Ganga, Brahmaputra. River Rhine. Where is River Rhine? Do you remember fault? Do you remember one of the best well-defined fault valley is Rhine River Valley, Rhine Rift Valley. Rhine River flows through a rift valley between Vosges and the Black Forest Mountains, between Germany in Germany. Between, that is, on one side there is a France, one side there is a Germany. So you remember this. If not, revise. That means somewhere there is a lack of revision. Revise your previous lectures. So River Rhine is another example. River Niger, Africa, Yellow River. Or it is also known as Wango River. China, Wango River in China. Wango River in China. Indus Delta, Indus River, Volga River, Irrawaddy River. Where is Irrawaddy River? Which country? Burma or Myanmar. Irrawaddy River system of Myanmar, very famous for timber production. Volga River, Russia. Mekong River, River Mekong, Vietnam. You have one assignment, that is, after I finish you giving this list, when you finish the lecture, look at each and every river and make a list that which part they drain into, whether they drain into Mediterranean Sea, whether they drain into Arabian Sea, whether they drain into Mediterranean Sea, whether they drain into Atlantic Ocean or Indian Ocean, whether they drain into some other Yellow Sea, or what is that area known as, in which country. And Mekong, find out which is the major lake situated. You don't have to do any extra work. Just open your atlas, and in the atlas you will see the lake. The name, even I am giving you the name of a lake, Tonle Sap Lake. See where it is located. Just have a look at that lake. So that your, as I say, the more you process, the more you use your brain, it will work well. So, and the last important river here is Danube River system. Danube River, that is again Europe. It passes through numerous capital countries of Europe. So one of the again important rivers. These are the important rivers. So what you remember, it is the most common type of delta. See, major rivers of the world are forming this kind of an arcuate delta or fan-shaped delta. Arcuate means a fan-shaped or semicircular. Therefore the name is arcuate delta. Why it is semicircular? Because the river water being as dense as a seawater, it forms a semicircular fan. Only because of high velocity the central part goes deep inside, while the other parts do not go deep inside. Now the other kind of an delta is an finger-shaped delta or bird foot delta. Bird foot delta. Now look here, and this delta, again consider the situation when there is a sea water over here. Now in case of the rivers which are coming down with a very, very high velocity, and they are carrying extremely fine sediments, because they are carrying extremely fine sediments, even though they are in the later stage of erosion, their velocity is obviously high. The larger the sediments, the velocity will be low. Why? Because it does not have that much, there is no slope in the plain region. So in the regions where the river comes with very, very dense, very, very finer sediments with very high velocity, it enters into the sea. And it enters deep into the sea. And after entering deep inside the sea, it gets bifurcated into different channels. And then it starts depositing. And how is the deposit? The deposit is just, because the sediments are very fine, the deposit is just made around in this region. These are the only areas where the deposit is made. That is in the rivers which are carrying very, very fine amount of sediment. So such kind of a delta, if we'll draw a diagram of such kind of a delta, does it look like what does it look? Does it look like a foot of a bird? Or doesn't it look like a fingers? Such kind of a delta is known as a bird foot delta. Why is the bird foot delta formed? Now here the rivers with very high velocity, carrying fine sediments, enter deep inside the sea. Enter deep inside the sea. Here the river water is lighter than the sea water. Not dense, but it is lighter than the sea water. Why? Because it is carrying fine sediments. River water is lighter than sea water. Therefore, it goes deep inside the sea and forms very linear shaped delta. That is, it goes deep and then starts depositing the sediments. Such kind of a delta is known as a bird foot delta or finger delta. It's known as a bird foot or finger delta. The best example in the world is Mississippi River system of USA. The best example is Mississippi River system of USA. Mississippi River of an USA. The best example is Mississippi River, USA. The bird foot delta, you look at the map of USA, come to the Gulf of Mexico, just have a look at the atlas just now so that you will never forget again. Mississippi River, you will see that long linear delta, it resembling the finger of a hand. So it is an example of a linear delta, means line delta. It is not an semicircular delta, it is a long and linear delta. Which resembles the foot of a bird, and therefore why it resembles the foot of a bird? Because the river water main channel enters deep inside the sea. Why? Because the sediments are very fine and the river water is lighter, therefore, and the velocity is high, so it can carry the sediments deep inside the sea before it starts depositing. Therefore, a long, narrow, linear delta is formed. Best example is Mississippi. Have you seen Mississippi Delta? Just have a look at the Mississippi Delta. Mississippi River drains in the Gulf of Mexico, and see how the delta is found. An example is a Mississippi Delta. Now, the third kind of a delta, whether it is any kind of a delta, consider any kind of a delta which is being found. For example, a fan-shaped delta. There is a main river channel and it is being distributed into different kind of channels, or it is a bird foot delta. Now, in any kind of a delta, if there is a river, a sea water, if due to some geological conditions, due to submergence of land under the sea, that is the tilting of the land inside the sea, or due to rise in the sea level, if this delta gets covered by the sea water, then obviously what you will see a long narrow line which looks like a delta which has been cut into half. That is the delta which has been truncated, the delta which has been cut into half. Such kind of a delta, when the river water, when the sea water enters the mouth of the river, deep inside the mouth of a river, is known as an estuarine delta, or simply estuaries. So, what is an estuary? What is an estuarine delta? This is the filling up of the estuaries. What are estuaries? The mouths of the river. Which are filled by seawater, are known as estuaries. are known as estuaries. The mouths of the rivers when they are filled by sea water they are known as an estuaries. Example here, if there is a river which was flowing once upon a time forming a large delta and meeting and going into the Arabian Sea. Now due to the tilting up of the land, downwards, or due to the rifting of the land, due to faulting, the sea water entered inside the river and now it is an estuary. It does not form a delta. That is why which coast of India tilted? The western coast of India had a fault. That is a part of when we'll do Indian geography. The western coast of India was a standard line and the sea level was lying below, and during the formation of a Cretaceous period and a side effect of Himalayas, this western Ghats went deep inside the western coast of India went deep inside the sea, and the sea, that is, it tilted and it went below the sea, and as a result the river Narmada and the river Tapi's mouth got filled with the sea and resulted into formation of estuary. And the part of a western coast which went inside the sea, if you look it from the western side, you will see it looks like a mountain, which is just an edge of a plateau which looks like a mountain. That is why we are saying it as a Ghats. So example of an estuarine delta is Narmada and Tapi. And Tapi river delta, and an example of an estuarine delta. Some of the delta look like they are just a modification or special kind of a delta, which just for example you remember, it looks like tooth-like delta. It is known as an cuspate delta. Just for preliminary examination you remember. It is when the river enters into the sea and deposits the sediments like a tooth. The sediments are deposited on the sides like a tooth. This tooth-like delta is known as cuspate delta. Example is Ebro River of Spain. Example is an Ebro River of Spain. So tooth-like delta, tooth-like projections in the delta. There is only one river, Ebro River of Spain. So with this we have finished with our fluvial landforms. There are three small topics, that is the karst topography, glaciated landforms, and the aeolian or the wind landforms, but very small, not as technical as and not as large as the fluvial landforms. But here, what is a delta? They can ask you, and what are the conditions for the formation of a delta? This remaining topics, that is the three remaining topics, are very small and mostly important from the preliminary point of view. So you again remember, arc-like delta is arcuate delta. Finger-like delta is an what delta? It is an example of a linear delta, or it is a bird foot delta. So bird foot delta, I give you only one example, Mississippi. Tooth-like delta is only one river, Ebro of Spain. Estuary is a kind when the sea water enters the mouth of a river, it is known as an estuary. We have one example, that is the Narmada and the Tapi river basin. So we will continue again with the glaciated topography. Till that time, thank you very much.